I want you to just think about a really specific, like almost totally irrational scenario that you've probably actually found yourself in recently.
Oh, I think I go.
Right. Because picture this. You just finished like a really fantastic book.
Yeah.
Maybe you read the entire thing on your Kindle, just swiping through the chapters in the dark before bed.
Or you listen to the audiobook, like on your commute.
Exactly. Letting the narrator do all the heavy lifting for you. The point is, you already know the story. You have completely consumed the plot. You know the characters, and like you legally own the digital license to the content.
You have the data.
Right. You have it. But then maybe a week later, you find yourself walking into a local bookstore, or you're just, browsing online, and you get this overwhelming, totally undeniable urge to buy a physical hardcover copy of that exact same book.
Even though you don't even plan to read it again.
Literally no intention of opening it anytime soon. You just want to put it on your shelf.
It's a fascinating behavioral quirk, honestly, and it really seems to be accelerating.
Yeah, it really does.
Because we live in this era of absolute digital convenience, right? The friction of acquiring information has been reduced to practically zero.
Zero. Yeah.
Yet the physical artifact, like the actual bound paper, the cardboard, the ink, it still exerts this strange, this gravitational pull on us. Like we have the data, but we crave the object.
And what's really interesting about that, what's so wild to me, is how this directly contradicts the whole dominant cultural narrative right now.
Oh, completely. The narrative is that the sky is falling.
Exactly. If you read, industry think pieces or just listen to the general cultural chatter, the prevailing wisdom is always that the publishing industry is in a state of perpetual crisis.
Right, that nobody reads anymore.
Yeah. The story goes that people simply aren't reading. Print is basically on life support, and the physical book is, going the way of the VHS tape.
Just obsolete.
Right. We're all just supposed to be hopelessly addicted to scrolling short-form videos, and we've completely abandoned the written word. And I genuinely expected that narrative to be true until we got our hands on today's source material for this deep dive.
Yeah, the material we're looking at today paints a starkly reality. I mean, totally.
Totally. So let's set the stage. What are we actually looking at?
So we have a transcript from a YouTube video essay. It's by an author named John Del Arroz, and he's basically analyzing the current state of the fantasy and sci-fi book market.
And what he outlines is just, it completely shatters that whole publishing in crisis myth.
It turns it totally on its head. We aren't looking at an industry in decline at all. We're looking at an industry that is undergoing this radical, ultra-lucrative metamorphosis into the luxury goods sector.
Yes, the luxury goods sector. We are diving headfirst into this hidden tier of the publishing world where individual books aren't selling for $20. They're moving for 5 figures.
In a matter of hours.
In hours. It's a completely different economic reality.
And, to kind of set the scene for this analysis, my backdrop for today's conversation, just visually, is a beautifully curated floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookstore.
Oh, I love that. Like a classic library.
Exactly. The kind of space you might find in some old academic institution, complete with the rolling brass ladder and all those leather-bound spines.
Set in mood.
Because today's conversation requires us to look past just the words printed on a page. We really need to examine consumer psychology, the mechanics of behavioral economics, and the evolving definition of what a physical book actually is in a post-digital world.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because as the transcript reveals, for this highly dedicated tier of consumers, a book is no longer just a delivery mechanism for a story.
Not at all.
So John Del Arroz, the speaker in the video, he starts by addressing this whole industry crisis head on, right?
Right. He states that he personally isn't seeing a downturn in sales.
Which is interesting on its own.
Yeah, but more importantly, he points to this massive systemic shift toward premium high-end editions across the entire board. And the examples he pulls to validate this are just staggering.
Yeah, let's get into the examples because they're wild.
So he immediately points to Brandon Sanderson.
Okay, who is basically a titan in modern fantasy.
Or arguably one of the biggest. And Sanderson launched a line of premium leather-bound editions of his older books.
Right.
And the transcript notes that this wasn't just some, fun little side project for hardcore fans. Sanderson generated millions of dollars in revenue from these leather-bound editions alone.
Millions.
Millions. This is purely physical media driving massive, massive capital.
And it isn't even just isolated to Sanderson's specific hyper-dedicated fan base either. The source also brings up Robert Jordan's classic fantasy novel, The Eye of the World.
Oh, right. That example was fascinating.
It really was, because the speaker highlights that a premium luxury version of this book sold hand over fist. It generated huge revenue, even though, the crazy part, there were widely noted production problems with that specific edition.
Yeah, people were actively buying it in droves despite known documented flaws in the manufacture.
Which just shows you that the desire for the premium object completely overrode the demand for a perfect product.
That specific detail about the manufacturing flaws is so incredibly telling.
Why do you think that is?
Well, when we hear the narrative that the book market is struggling, we really need to locate the origin of that anxiety. It's highly likely that standard mass-market paperback sales are what's actually hurting.
Right, like the airport newsstand stuff.
Exactly. The traditional airport paperback, that cheap disposable book you buy for a flight and then just leave in the hotel room, that specific format is definitely losing ground to tablets, phones, and audio.
Because it's just about the information.
Exactly. But what this data reveals is that the publishing industry's true growth vector, like the real financial explosion, relies on treating the physical book not as a disposable vessel, but as a premium collectible.
You know what this reminds me of? It feels identical to the evolution of the music industry over the last, 20 years.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right, because if you look at streaming, the music itself has essentially been devalued to zero in terms of digital access. I mean, Spotify pays artists fractions of a penny per stream.
Practically nothing.
Right. But those exact same fans who would absolutely refuse to pay $10 for a digital album download on iTunes, they will happily drop hundreds or even thousands of dollars on VIP concert tickets.
Or vinyl.
Yes. Limited edition heavyweight vinyl record. And the craziest part about the vinyl thing is that, half the people buying those records don't even own a record player.
Which is just mathematically hilarious.
It is. They don't play them. They just want the massive, beautiful sleeve art. They want the tangible artifact of their fandom. So my question is, are we seeing the exact same thing happen to reading? Has the book basically become a vinyl record?
I think taking that music analogy a step further perfectly isolates the shift in value.
How so?
Well, when the content itself becomes ubiquitous and practically free, whether that's through Spotify, Kindle Unlimited, or library lending app, the consumer's perceived value actually migrates. It moves from the information itself to the vessel holding the information.
Ah, okay. The vessel.
Right. A mass-market paperback is just a cheap utilitarian vessel for text. It's purely functional. But a leather-bound, gold-embossed edition, that's a statement piece.
It's an artifact.
Exactly. It's a physical testament to the reader's devotion to that specific narrative universe.
Which brings it right back to the listener. Seriously, look at your own shelves right now.
Yeah.
Think about the physical objects you keep on display in your home. You probably didn't buy them strictly for their utility, right?
Usually not.
You bought them for the aesthetic or for the emotional resonance they project into your living space. And this new wave of publishing seems explicitly designed to monetize that exact emotion.
Totally.
But to really understand how a stack of paper transforms into a luxury good, we have to look at the artists who are actually manufacturing these objects.
Because it's not the traditional publishers doing the heavy lifting here.
Right. The traditional publishing houses, the ones used to churning out millions of cheap paperbacks, they aren't necessarily the ones driving this luxury revolution.
No, the transcript actually provides an excellent window into the more artisanal side. The speaker discusses his own background as a collector, and he mentions these legacy premium publishers like Easton Press.
I've definitely seen Easton Press books.
Yeah.
Very classic.
Yeah, he notes he has collected their leather-bounded of classic authors like Tolkien, Anne McCaffrey, Lois McMaster Buthold, and Paul Ann. Easton Press basically represents the old guard of this model classic literature bound in uniform leather.
But then he transitions to the new player. This is where it gets really interesting. He specifically highlights a publisher called Castalia Library.
Right, Castalia.
And he doesn't just mention them in passing. He calls their production his absolute favorite, claiming they produce the highest quality books he has seen from literally anyone in the industry.
Which is high praise from a collector.
Huge praise. And he actually collaborated with Castalia Library for his own work, right? A comic book property he wrote called Aya Ren, Agent of Terra Prime.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is the level of tactile detail he goes into regarding this specific comic book project. It's crucial for understanding the value prop.
Yeah, walk us through the materials he describes.
Okay, so he describes a binding made of beautiful royal purple material, accented with gold.
Royal purple.
Right. He details a custom foil stamp that was specifically designed by the comics artist just for the cover. He mentions these unique, intricate designs printed directly onto the edges of the paper, the text block itself, and the use of exceptionally gorgeous, high-quality heavy paper for the interior.
Okay, I really want to pause on those material descriptions for a second.
They're pretty extravagant.
All right. Royal purple, gold accent, custom foil stamp, gilded edges. We are talking about an independent comic book about a sci-fi, but the materials being used sound like an artifact you would pull out of a medieval king's tomb.
Or like an illuminated manuscript from the 14th century.
Exactly. The cognitive dissonance is just wild to me. If I can get the exact same story, the exact same dialogue and art, digitally on a tablet for a few bucks, I have to ask, at what point does the actual story become secondary to the paper it's printed on?
It's a great question.
Like, is this still about the author's narrative art, or is this now entirely about the bookbinder's art?
I think that tension is the core engine of this entire...
Right.
Yeah. If we look back historically, before the Gutenberg press, books were exclusively luxury items.
Right, because everything was done by hand.
Exactly. They were painstakingly hand-copied and bound in leather and jewels. There were literal, physical manifestations of immense wealth and instant power.
Only kings and the church had them.
Right. Then the printing press democratized, making the book cheap and accessible for everyone.
Which was a good thing.
Of course. But what we are seeing now is a conscious reversion to the pre-Gutenberg mentality, but applied to modern pop culture.
Oh, wow. That's a fascinating way to frame it.
The story is the necessary foundation, yes, but the premium value prop is tactile. Think about the color. Royal purple, historically required incredibly expensive, rare dye. Gold leaf was a literal display of hoarded wealth.
So they're pushing historical buttons in our brains.
Exactly. By utilizing these specific materials, modern boutique publishers are intentionally triggering deeply ingrained psychological cues regarding historical luxury, prestige, and class.
It is the physical manifestation of identity and fandom. You don't just, enjoy a story. You align your identity with it so strongly that you literally enshrine it in purple and gold to broadcast that alignment to anyone who walks into your house.
It's a status symbol.
Totally. And the source introduces another major player in this space doing exactly that, right? A company called Lit Escalate.
Yes, Lit Escalates. They are a huge part of this transcript.
The speaker mentions they are collaborating with a variety of authors, including V.E. Schwab.
Which is an interesting inclusion.
Yeah, he briefly categorizes Schwab as a modernist writer whom he personally isn't interested in reading, but he acknowledges their prominent presence in this high-end collectible space.
What's fascinating here is the use of the term modernist writer in that context. It's a very specific cultural signifier.
How so? What does he mean by that?
Well, the speaker seems to be using it to delineate between classic, traditional sci-fi and fantasy trope, which he clearly prefers and writes himself, and more contemporary, structurally experimental, or stylistically modern like Schwab's work.
Got it. So he's drawing a line in the sand of his own tastes.
Right. But the underlying point he is making, which is crucial, is that regardless of the specific subgenre or writing style, this premium luxury model is successfully capturing readers across the entire spectrum of
It's universal within the genre.
Exactly.
And if we want to see exactly how successful this model is, like how much these fans are truly willing to pay for this bookbinder's art we're talking about, the source provides a really fascinating multi-million-dollar case study.
It's an incredible case study.
It revolves around a campaign run by that company, Lit Escalate, for Joe Abercrombie's highly popular First Law fantasy trilogy.
Right. And the raw data from this campaign is basically a perfect distillation of the modern publishing economy.
Let's talk about those numbers because they are staggering. We are talking about almost 10,000 individual backers.
10,000 people.
And they raised $2.1 million.
For a trilogy of books that already exists.
Yes, $2.1 million for a premium printing of a fantasy trilogy that has already been available in standard formats for years. People already own these books.
If we look at the pricing breakdown provided in the transcript, it reveals the entry-level economics of this premium tier.
Walk us through the pricing.
So an unsigned premium copy of just one of the books in the trilogy was priced at $60.
Okay, $60 for one book.
Right. Alternatively, a backer could purchase the complete set of all 3 books for $150, which the speaker points out offered a slight bundle discount.
Okay, wait. $150 for 3 beautiful books actually seems somewhat reasonable compared to the crazy stuff we're about to talk about later.
There's the entry-level premium tier, yeah.
But it's the psychology of the purchase that is so compelling to me. The speaker in the video, looking back at this specific Abercrombie campaign, he openly admits that he, quote, hemmed and hawed over it while it was live.
He was on the fence.
Right. He wanted it, but he ultimately decided not to back it, attributing the decision to timing and just, not having the disposable funds at that exact moment.
Which is very relatable.
Super relatable. But in the present day, he explicitly states he has massive regret. He uses the exact phrase, massive FOMO, because he can't go back and acquire those specific editions now.
The window is closed.
Forever.
And this perfectly illustrates the mechanics of artificial scarcity and time-gated supply chains.
How does that actually work behind the scenes?
Let's look at the financial architecture of this first. Finding nearly 10,000 people globally willing to drop 150 generates millions in revenue, obviously. But the real genius is the use of the crowdfunding model.
Because traditional publishing doesn't work like that.
Not at all. Traditional publishing is inherently risky. A publisher estimates demand, prints, say, 50,000 copies of a hardcover, pays to warehouse them, pays to ship them to retail stores, and just hopes they sell.
And if they don't?
If the books sit on the shelves, the publisher takes a massive loss on returns and pulped inventory. It's a guessing.
But with crowdfunding, they are completely inverting that risk structure, aren't they?
Completely.
They're getting the capital, the $2.1 million, before the printing presses even turn on.
Exactly.
So there is no warehouse full of unsold copies gathering dust because they only print exactly the number of books that have already been paid for. It is a profoundly efficient, essentially zero-waste business model.
It's brilliant. And the engine driving that efficiency, the thing that compels 10,000 people to hand over their money months before a product even exists, is the artificial scarcity you mentioned.
The FOMO.
Right. These campaigns operate within strictly limited time windows. 30 days, maybe less. It forces the consumer into a binary decision.
You can just sleep on it.
No, you cannot put this book on an Amazon wish list and wait for it to drop in price for Black Friday. You either commit your capital right now or you miss out on the artifact forever.
And the speaker's lingering regret is literal proof of concept for this model.
Exact. The psychological pain of not possessing exclusive item eventually outweighs the temporary financial pain of the $150. They know that if they wait, the aftermarket prices will be...
Which is crazy to think about. But what really gets me is that the monetization of these fans goes way beyond just the books themselves.
Oh, the merchandise.
Yes. The source material notes that Lit Escalates doesn't just do premium book printing. They do dedicated merchandise drops for Abercrombie's most recent.
Which is standard for big fandom.
Sure. But even more fascinating, they sell alternate cover jackets for his first and second trilogy, just the paper jacket.
Yes, the dust jackets.
You keep the book you already own, but you pay to change its clothes.
It really makes me think about sneakerhead.
That's a really good comparison.
Right, where people buy seasonal shoe drops not to wear them, but to display them. Are we seeing authors being transformed into lifestyle brands? Are fans buying seasonal book jackets the same way people buy Supreme t-shirts? The parallel to streetwear and sneaker culture is incredibly active. This is the monetization of
Parasocial relationships. Explain that a bit for text.
Well, a fan doesn't just enjoy Joe Abercrombie's writing. They feel a sense of loyalty and connection to him as a creator. Buying the seasonal alternate cover jacket is a way of continuously engaging with that brand, signaling your ongoing loyalty and, keeping your physical display fresh.
It's like updating your avatar, but in the real world.
Exactly. It is pure aesthetic consumption, completely divorced from the act. The story hasn't changed, just the packaging.
Well, if spending money on an alternate paper jacket for a book you already own seems wild, let me assure you, $150 is just the waiting pool.
It really is just the beginning.
The speaker in our source video moves on to detail a new campaign from Lit Escalates that takes the pricing completely into the stratosphere.
You are referring to the special edition drop for Pierce Brown's sci-fi series, Red Rising.
I am indeed. And here's where it gets really interesting.
This is the big one.
The video breaks down a highly anticipated drop for the original Red Rising book, along with specialized foil editions for its sequel, Golden Sun. The speaker meticulously walks us through 4 distinct tiers of exclusivity for this release.
Or cheers.
And I really want to take our time dissecting these tiers because this structure is the absolute bleeding edge of the premium book market. This is where behavioral economics meets sheer, unfiltered fan obsession.
It truly is a masterclass in pricing strategy. Let's begin at the foundation, the lowest point of entry, the artist.
Okay, the artist edition. This one is priced at $100.
Right.
And according to the source, the crucial detail here is that it is not limited by a specific predetermined quantity. Like they aren't capping the run at 5,000 copies.
Well, how is it limited?
Instead, it is limited strictly by a 3-week pre-order window. However many individuals pull out their credit cards during those 21 days, that is exactly how many copies will exist in the world, period.
This serves as the wide net approach. $100 is an accessible luxury for a dedicated.
It's a nice dinner out.
Exactly. It captures the bulk of the audience who desperately wants a premium special edition, but simply cannot justify spending a mortgage payment on a novel.
Right.
It relies entirely on that time-gated scarcity we just discussed. But strategically, the $100 tier also serves a secondary psychological purpose.
What's that?
It acts as a price anchor. By establishing that the basic premium version is $100, it makes the subsequent wildly expensive tiers seem somewhat mathematically grounded in the established reality of this specific market.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And that grounding is desperately needed because Tier 2 takes a massive leap.
It really does.
It's called the number edition, and the price jumps from $100 to roughly $780.
$780.
For one book. This edition is strictly limited to 350 physical copies. Each one has a unique number stamped into it. And the speaker notes, with a bit of awe, honestly, that it's sold out immediately upon launch. If we look at the raw revenue, the speaker provides the calculation. 350 copies multiplied by $780 each yields approximately $207,000 in gross revenue.
Over $250,000.
Generated instantaneously. The moment the webpage went live, over $250,000.
Over $250,000 gone in a flash.
Yeah.
For just 350 books. And we are still only halfway up the ladder.
We haven't even hit the crazy.
No. Tier 3 introduces the lettered edition.
The lettered edition.
The price tag on this single book is $2,750.
Now, this requires a bit of historical publishing context to really understand why they do this.
Okay, lay it on us.
A standard lettered edition is a very old, deeply respected tradition in fine bookbinding for establishing the absolute utmost exclusivity.
Right.
Historically, it is strictly limited to 26 copies globally, or one for each letter of the English alphabet, A
through Z. But the source notes a brilliant and, frankly, somewhat sneaky little maneuver the publisher pulls here.
Oh, it's very clever.
They didn't limit this drop to 26 copies. They expanded the pool to 52 copies by utilizing double letters.
A, B, B, C, C.
Exactly, all the way down the alphabet again. The speaker also mentions it comes housed in what he describes as a nice case.
A nice case for almost $3,000?
Right. And yes, despite the $2,750 price tag, all 52 copies sold out immediately.
This is where the true genius of tiered exclusivity reveals. It touches on the economic concept of Veblen goods.
Veblen goods. What's that?
A Veblen good is a luxury item where the demand actually increases as the price goes up because the exorbitant price itself is the feature. It signals the buyer's extreme wealth and status to others.
So the price is the point.
Exactly. Think of a Rolex watch or a Birkin bag. The publisher clearly knew from their data that the demand for a nearly $3,000 tier far outstripped just 26.
There are way more than 26 rich superfans.
Right. There were dozens of fans willing to pay that much.
Because why not just make 100 copies and call it a day? Why stick to the weird double letter thing?
Because if they arbitrarily printed 100 copies, it would cease to feel like a traditional lettered. It would break the fragile illusion of hyper-exhibit that the high-end collector demands.
Oh, so they have to maintain the tradition.
By expanding it to exactly 52 copies using the double letter loophole, they literally double their top-end revenue without diluting the perceived prestige of the letter.
That is so.
The source calculates this tier generated roughly $140,000. So combining the numbered and lettered edition, we are looking at nearly $500,000 secured revenue from a total of just
$500,000. But wait, we haven't even reached the top.
We haven't.
There's a fourth tier, the absolute apex of the market, the Roman numeral edition. The speaker in the video was openly shocked by this tier. He actually admits he had to stop and ask an AI chatbot while recording the video just to figure out what a Roman numeral edition even was because it's so rare.
It is the rarest of the rare. It is limited to just 10 copies globally.
10 copies. And the price for one of those 10 copies.
Brace yourself.
$10,750 for one single book. $10,750.
Unbelievable.
And it sold out the very morning it launched. 10 individuals woke up, had their morning coffee, logged onto a website, and dropped almost $11,000 on a physical copy of Red Rising.
Just another Tuesday for them.
Right. The source details what exactly makes it so obscenely expensive. It is naturally signed by the author, Pierce Brown.
Of course.
It features remark drawings by the artist, meaning original, one-of-a-kind, hand-drawn sketches executed directly onto the pages of that specific copy.
Which is really cool, admittedly.
It is cool. And perhaps most incredibly, it comes housed in a custom enclosure that the speaker literally refers to as a book coffin.
A book coffin.
A book coffin.
The psychological weight of that phrasing, hensely evocative.
I cannot stop thinking about that phrase. The speaker in the video looks at the specs for this $10,750 object and openly admits, I'd be scared to read this at this price.
And he's right.
He is completely right to feel that way. By housing the book in a literal coffin, is the publisher not explicitly admitting that the book is dead as a piece of reading material?
It is entombed.
Yes. You don't take a $10,000 book to the beat. You don't read it in the bath. You don't even crack the spine to check the font. You worship it. It sits on a pedestal in a climate-controlled room.
like a museum piece.
Exactly. It really makes me wonder, is this the ultimate purest evolution of fandom? Or is this just a cynical flex for ultra-rich collectors looking for alternative investment assets?
It really forces us to confront the utility of art in a hyper-capitalist framework. At $10,750, the object's utility as a novel, as a mechanism for transmitting a narrative, is absolute zero.
Right, you'd never read it.
You'd buy the $9 paperback to actually read the story. But its utility as an alternative investment vehicle or as an artifact of ultimate undeniable devotion is 100%.
It's all about what it represents.
The coffin is functionally designed to protect a financial asset, not to facilitate the act of reading. It is a museum piece that simply happens to have words printed in.
That's a great way to put it.
The publisher knows this perfectly well. The buyer knows this perfect. The performance of buying it, the status of owning one of only 10 in the entire world is the actual product being sold.
So the book itself is secondary.
The book inside the coffin is merely the physical risk for that.
If you're listening to this right now, I really want you to think about your absolute favorite piece of media.
Oh, this is a fun thought experiment.
What story fundamentally rewired your brain when you first experienced? If you suddenly had unlimited disposable income like money is no object, what single story is so tied to your core identity that you would happily pay 5 figures just to have the ultimate, definitive, coffin-encased physical artifact of it sitting in your living room?
It's a profound question.
It really is, because it asks what price we put on our own nostalgia and identity.
And, it transitions us perfectly to the final and perhaps most revealing layer of our source material.
Oh, right. Because we have to talk about why this video even exists.
Exactly. Because the speaker in this YouTube transcript, Jean Del Aros, is not presenting these astronomical sales figures simply as an impartial journalist covering industry news. He has a distinct motive.
He absolutely does. He is an independent author himself. And this entire video essay, while delivering factual, jaw-dropping industry news, is structurally built around a very specific, highly effective marketing agenda.
It is the modern creator's blueprint in action.
Right. Amidst all the shock and awe over $10,000 book coffins and millions in Kickstarter revenue, the speaker is actively, methodically building his own audience funnel.
He's selling.
He's selling. He utilizes the video to heavily promote his own upcoming project, specifically a definitive edition of his steampunk fantasy series called Russlandia.
And he mentions his other work too, right?
Yeah, he also frequently drops mentions of his broader ongoing universe, Stars Entwined, ensuring the viewer knows the breadth of his entire catalog.
The transcript shows him heavily pitching his email newsletter throughout the video as well. And he notes a very specific metric, which I found fast. His mailing list is currently over 9,200 strong.
9,200 people, which is a remarkably potent number for an independent author who controls all of his own distribution.
It's a massive asset.
And the source text outlines exactly how he acquires those emails. His lead magnet, like the ethical bribe to get you to sign up, is an offer of 3 free books.
Three.
And they aren't even all in the same genre. You get a fantasy book, a sci-fi book, and a full superhero graphic novel entirely for free, just for handing over your email address.
When you synthesize the entire transcript from the Brandon Sanderson $1 Million Successes down to the free superhero graphic novel, the true architectural genius of the source material reveals itself.
It's a funnel.
The video essay is not just commentary. It is a perfectly executed, top-of-funnel marketing strategy.
I want to break down the mechanics of that funnel for a second, because it's really clever. How exactly is he leveraging the success of massive names like Pierce Brown and Brandon Sanderson to sell his own independent steampunk series?
It relies entirely on market validation and psychological.
Okay, unpack that.
The speaker uses the documented multi-million-dollar successes of Sanderson, Abercrombie, and Brown to validate the very concept of the premium book market to his view.
He's showing them it's normal.
Exactly. He is essentially proving to his audience, look at the data. This isn't a fad. This is what the biggest, most dedicated fans in the world are doing right now. This is the new gold standard of supporting the authors you love.
Right. You want to be a real fan? This is what real fans do.
Precise. He builds the hype. He deliberately stokes the FOMO by admitting his own lingering regrets about missing the Abercrombie drop.
Right, he makes it personal.
And then, right at the moment the viewer is primed to desire these high-end exclusive editions, he positions his own upcoming Russlandia project as the accessible entry.
Oh, that's so smart.
The subtext is brilliantly clear. You missed out on Joe Abercrombie's first law. You probably don't have the capital for a $10,000 Red Rising coffin, but you can get in on the ground floor of my premium universe right now.
Don't miss out again.
Oh.
Wow. It makes you wonder about the sustainability of this model for the average writer, though.
It's a lot of work.
It is. The speaker is offering 3 completely different full-length work across a fantasy novel, a sci-fi novel, and a comic book just to acquire a single email address. Is the modern independent author now forced to be this relentless, multi-genre content machine, constantly giving away massive chunks of their life's work for free, while simultaneously acting as a high-end luxury salesman pushing premium leather-bound just to survive in the industry?
It sounds exhausting when you put it like that.
Right. Or is this actually the most empowering era in history, allowing a savvy creator to completely bypass the gatekeepers of traditional New York publishing houses?
The reality is that it is undeniably empowering, but it fundamentally shifts the job.
How so?
It requires a highly specific dual-class skill set. In this new premium economy, an author no longer needs to chase a million casual readers buying a cheap $5 paperback at the grocery store to make a sustainable living.
You don't need Stephen King numbers anymore.
Not at all. If an author has a direct-to-consumer newsletter of 9,200 deeply invested, parasocially bonded fans, like the speaker has meticulously built, and they can convert even 5% of that list into buying a $100 or $150 premium edition, the economics work out brilliantly.
Because there's no middleman.
Exactly. The creator captures 100% of the margin, but it demands that the author can no longer simply be a solitary writer locked in a room.
They can't just be artists.
They must simultaneously act as the chief marketing officer, the community manager, and the luxury brand ambassador for their own property.
It is a radically different landscape than the quiet, dusty, romanticized image we traditionally associate with being a novel.
Totally.
The modern author is basically a startup CEO selling artisanal artifacts.
That's a great way to summarize it.
So, to bring all these threads together, let's look at the arc of the journey we've taken through this source material today.
It's been quite a journey.
We started by examining a pervasive cultural myth, the persistent idea that the publishing industry is in a terminal crisis and that the physical printed book is a dying medium in the face of endless digital scrolling.
And through the data, we discovered that while mass-market disposable reading habits are absolutely shifting toward digital formats, the primal desire for the physical object itself is stronger, more sophisticated, and drastically more lucrative than ever before.
We looked closely at the artisans driving this change. We examined the tactile sensory allure of royal purple bindings, gilded edges, and custom foil stamp that elevate a relatively simple sci-fi comic book into a display of high art and historical luxury.
It's all about the physical experience.
We dove deep into the mechanics of the crowdfunding economy, watching how a $2.1 million campaign materializes out of the strategic application of artificial scarcity and the deep-seated psychological pain of missing a limited purchasing window.
The FOMO.
Exact. We also examined the extreme razor-thin upper limits of this new market, the tiered exclusivity models that allow a boutique publisher to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars instantaneously.
Culminating in the sheer audacity of the $10,750 Roman numeral.
The literal entombment of a story inside a book coffin.
Still can't get over that phrase.
And finally, we saw exactly how independent creators are weaponizing this new reality, using the validated success of the premium luxury market to build their own dedicated sales funnel.
Eagerly trading free digital content for the chance to sell high-margin physical artifacts.
Right. Trading massive amounts of free digital content for the eventual opportunity to sell a luxury physical artifact directly to their most loyal fans.
The underlying takeaway here really reinforces a deeply held belief about human nature and our relationship.
What's that?
Knowledge, sprawling narratives, and imaginative art, they hold immense, intangible value to us. And this entire market phenomenon proves that even in an age of infinite digital convenience, where nearly every story ever written is available instantly on a glowing piece of glass in our pocket, humans still possess an overwhelming desire to own, touch, and to permanently display the things that hold emotional meaning.
We need to make it real.
We possess a fundamental need to make the intangible impact of a story physically manifest real world.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to consider. We talk at the very beginning of this deep dive about that strange, irrational urge to buy a physical copy of a book you already own digitally.
Right, the urge to put it on the shelf.
But look at the incredible extremes we've explored today. Look at the absolute peak of this market.
Yeah.
If the ultimate, most highly prized manifestation of a beloved story is an $11,000 book sealed away in a beautiful custom coffin, literally too expensive, too rare, and too fragile to ever actually open and read.
It really makes you wonder.
Has the publishing industry finally realized something truly fundamental about their most dedicated consumer? For the biggest fans, they aren't actually selling stories anymore. The story was consumed digitally months ago. They're selling an identity.
An identity.
So the next time you walk past your own bookshelf, take a moment to look past the titles printed on the spine. Look at the objects themselves. What does that specific collection of paper, cardboard, and maybe even a little royal purple really say about who you are?